Hey guys, so Mrs. Magera could not be here again, so we're going to be I'm going to be doing this one by myself. And this one is going to be on child labor. So we've been talking about this growing issue not issue, but this change in the United States where they've gone from being a farming, more rural community to now people are moving to cities. There's factories, there's industry, there's railroads. It's very urban and just like work hours. And we talked about how some of these work conditions were tough and they had all these issues and living conditions were poor because these people were working in these low paying jobs. It's the development of the working class. But we're going to be focusing specifically tomorrow on child labor. And right now we're talking some about child labor as well. So fighting against child labor, okay? So in the 20th century, there were no federal laws, which federal is the national laws. There were some state laws, but no national laws preventing child labor. Basically, there was nothing saying you couldn't employ kids to work. Nothing against that. Children were employed in a wide range of industries, so they were used a lot. People were using children. Textile, which is where they make cloth, which is what that picture is of. It's a picture of a girl working in a cloth factory. In agriculture, manufacturing, lots of things kids were being used for. And you did in your reading yesterday is because their labor was cheap. Parents needed the money, a lot of cases. And they sometimes even their like bodies and stuff, their hands could grab things that adult hands couldn't. They were more nimble in that way. But the big thing was that they were you could pay them less than an adult worker. So the factory owners like that. So there's a lot of child labor everywhere. And these kids wouldn't be going to school, instead they'd be working usually. At the turn of the 20th century, though, progressive reformers, people are going to try to organize to challenge the use of child labor. Let's try to fight this back. So we talked about unions, but there's also going to be this fight against child labor from many of the people as well. And then National Child Labor Committee, NCLC, okay, was founded in 1904, and its job was to fight child labor and help end it. And it hires a guy. His name is Louis Hine, and he's a photographer. And they hire him, and they want him to go and take pictures of working conditions. Show what working in these factories looks like. What are these children doing? And he's going to take these pictures, and he's going to try to publish them. The idea is that they're going to convince the public that children shouldn't be doing it. Because many people didn't actually know what these kids were doing. Sometimes the parents didn't even really know, because a kid would go off and they'd come back. They wouldn't be allowed to be working at a different place than the parent worked, so the parent wouldn't know. So this guy was there to kind of publish it, bring it to the forefront, making sure that everyone could see what was happening in child labor, what was the bad stuff going on there. So that was Louis Hine, that was his job. He would do this a bunch of time. Serious injuries were common, and this is one of his photos. And you can see them, right, climbing on this machine, right? And you can just imagine, right, one of those strings could yank out a finger, take off an ear, hurt the kid. Sometimes the kid would even die. By about 25% of workers in textile mills in the South were under the age of 16. So if you were in a factory that made cloth, there's a 25% chance that you were under the age of 16. So very young kids, a lot of times only 6 or 7 years old, working in these factories. That's very tough. Hard working conditions, little breaks. They'd be whacked and beaten if they didn't do what they want, if they didn't do what the factory owners wanted, that is. So very violent. Here's another picture of it. We can see boys working in glass manufacturing in Indiana. You can see the dirt on their faces. Their clothes are ripped. That boy has his shoulders exposed because a rip has happened. And it's been torn, right? They're not in great, it doesn't look like great working conditions. And you can just imagine ventilation. It looks stuffy. It looks dark. They were very close to, as the caption says, they were close to hot molten glass and hot furnaces. Not safe working conditions for younger kids, right? 10, 9-year-olds should not be working in super hard conditions like that. But they were, and they were put in these very tough places. This one, you can see a 5-year-old. This kid's 5 years old, okay? Extremely young. That is younger than some of the students that can go to school, okay? So barely just 5 years old, and he works at a seafood processing plant. And he's a shrimp picker. So you can see, right, his job is to break the shells off shrimp and separate the meat with his finger. So he'd be doing this hour after hour, separating shrimp from, taking apart shrimp and taking out the meat from it. At only 5 years old, working a long days. You can see the pile of oyster shells behind him. dirty, not safe. He doesn't even have shoes on. If you look at that, he doesn't have shoes on. He has his clothes look dirty. They look torn. He's 5 years old as well. That's insane. Oops. Yeah, my bad. Child labor laws. Okay, so it's going to eventually be successful. The NCLC is going to be very effective, mainly a lot because of these photos. These photos really draw people's attention to this. All right. As the idea comes up that kids should not be working, instead they should go to school, okay? That school should be their full-time job. They should not be working in industries or in factories or in the farms. Instead, they should be going to school full-time. When they're old enough, then they can work. But let's not send them to the factories when they're super young. Let's put them in schools. Some states pass laws to regulate the age which children can work and under what conditions. So they put laws in place saying they can only work for this amount of time or this much hours. And they finally, it wasn't until the Great Depression, which is going to be in the 1930s, that federal law finally starts limiting child labor. They start taking out child labor. Sorry. But it's going to take a long time before that passes. Okay, so, but you can see the spike to try to end child labor and bring it to an end. A lot of states though would try to make it. So what you'll be looking at was what was working like for these children. What was work like? You'll be looking at that tomorrow. You'll be going through a couple of photos with that. But yeah, guys, so good job. I answered the questions. If you have any questions, send me an email. Good work.